The Lady of Heaven, a horror story. The Arrival. The village of Black Hollow was a place forgotten by time. Nestled deep within the mist-shrouded mountains, it was a settlement where the sun rarely pierced through the thick canopy of ancient trees. The villagers lived simple lives, their days marked by the tolling of the old church bell and their nights by the whispers of the wind through the pines. But there was one story that every child in Black Hollow grew up hearing, a tale so chilling that it was spoken of only in hushed tones. It was the legend of the Lady of Heaven. No one knew where she came from or why she had chosen their village. Some said she was a fallen angel, cast out from the heavens for unspeakable sins. Others believed she was a vengeful spirit, cursed to wander the earth for eternity. But all agreed on one thing: to see her was to invite death. It was on a cold, moonless night that the first sign of her return appeared. Old Man Grayson, the village's reclusive shepherd, was the first to notice the strange light flickering in the woods. He had been tending to his flock when he saw it, a pale, ethereal glow emanating from the depths of the forest. At first, he thought it was a trick of the fog, but as he drew closer, the light grew brighter, pulsating like a heartbeat. And then he saw her. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her figure draped in a flowing white gown that seemed to shimmer in the darkness. Her face was obscured by a veil, but Grayson could feel her gaze piercing through him, cold and unrelenting. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. His legs gave way, and he collapsed to the ground, his heart pounding in his chest. When the villagers found him the next morning, he was barely alive. His eyes were wide with terror, and his lips moved in silent whispers. "The Lady of Heaven," he repeated over and over again. "She has returned. The curse." The news of Grayson's encounter spread through the village like wildfire. Fear gripped the hearts of the villagers, and they began to barricade their homes, praying for protection against the unseen threat. But their prayers went unanswered. One by one, the villagers began to disappear. It started with young Emily, the baker's daughter. She had been playing near the edge of the forest when she vanished without a trace. Her parents searched for hours, calling out her name, but all they found was a single white feather lying on the ground. Then it was Thomas, the blacksmith's apprentice. He had been working late in the forge when he heard a faint melody drifting through the air. It was a haunting tune, one that seemed to beckon him into the night. Against his better judgment, he followed the sound, and he was never seen again. The villagers were desperate. They turned to Father O'Malley, the village priest, for guidance. He had spent years studying the ancient texts, searching for answers to the mysteries that plagued their land. And it was in one of these texts that he found a passage about the Lady of Heaven. According to the legend, the lady was once a mortal woman named Seraphina, who had lived centuries ago. She was known for her beauty and kindness, but her life took a tragic turn when she fell in love with a man who betrayed her. Heartbroken and consumed by rage, she made a pact with a dark entity, trading her soul for the power to exact revenge. But the power came at a cost. It transformed her into a vengeful spirit, doomed to wander the earth and claim the souls of the living. The only way to stop her, the text said, was to find the relic she had left behind, a silver locket containing a lock of her hair. It was said to be hidden in the ruins of an old chapel deep within the forest. But the journey would be perilous, and not all who sought it would return. The journey. A small group of villagers volunteered to embark on the quest, led by Father O'Malley. Among them was Sarah, a young woman who had lost her brother to the lady's curse. She was determined to put an end to the terror, no matter the cost. The forest was even more foreboding than they had imagined. The trees loomed overhead like silent sentinels, their branches twisted into grotesque shapes. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground was littered with bones, reminders of those who had ventured into the woods and never returned. As they pressed on, the group began to experience strange phenomena. They heard whispers in the wind, saw shadows moving in the corners of their vision, and felt an oppressive weight pressing down on their chests. It was as if the forest itself was alive, watching and waiting for them to make a mistake. After hours of searching, they finally reached the ruins of the chapel. It was a crumbling structure, its walls covered in ivy and its roof partially collapsed. Inside, they found the altar, and beneath it, a hidden compartment containing the silver locket. But as Sarah reached for it, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. The air grew cold, and a faint glow appeared in the shadows. The Lady of Heaven had found them. The confrontation. The lady emerged from the darkness, her veil billowing around her like a shroud. Her eyes burned with a cold, otherworldly light, and her voice echoed through the ruins like a death knell. "You dare to defy me?" she hissed, her gaze fixed on Sarah. "You cannot escape your fate." Father O'Malley stepped forward, holding the locket aloft. "In the name of the Almighty, I command you to leave this place." The lady let out a piercing scream, her form flickering like a dying flame. But she did not retreat. Instead, she lunged at the priest, her claws extended. Sarah acted on instinct. She grabbed the locket and hurled it to the ground, shattering it into pieces. A blinding light filled the chapel, and the lady let out a final, agonized wail before vanishing into the ether. The aftermath. The villagers returned to Black Hollow, their hearts heavy but hopeful. The curse had been lifted, and the Lady of Heaven was no more. But as Sarah stood at the edge of the forest, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching her. And in the distance, she thought she heard a faint melody drifting through the trees.